the comics. And this is something that's been like on my mind for a while now. Like, you guys know I'm a big comic book fan. I'm a huge comic book fan. Huge. And I have a lot of Captain America. Look, I have Captain America #1s. I have a few of them. I just bought the latest #1. I just put it in my chair. I'm a big comic book fan. So this kind of broke my heart when I read that Anthony Mackie says he avoided the comics before playing Cap. Which is what? So what? All right. So I think it was originally with an interview with Collider, but it was also reported here by comicbook.com. Let's see. The actor explained in an interview with Collider. Oh, the interview's here. It's a video interview, so I'm not going to play the video so that they could copyright claim hours. Anyway, he didn't turn to the comics for assistance when the time came to wield the shield. He says, I literally just focused on the script. I mean, these stories are so interesting because they don't do the comic books page by page. They use the comic books as a blueprint or an outline. So you can have 3 or 4 different comic books in one movie. So I stayed away from the comic books and just utilized the script and the story and the background that we've created of Sam Wilson to develop him into the Captain America he is in the movie. And they also added in a detail that Mackie is far from the only actor not to feel the need to take a deep dive into the source material, and Sam's story played out very differently on the page. Plus, he's been suiting up as the character long enough, arguably, to best handle his transition from Falcon to Captain America. He added in a line that there were 2 words that kept coming up on set every day we shot this movie. It was compassion and it was empathy. I think when you look at, the great power comes great responsibility, right? And Sam Wilson is now taking the mantle of Captain America. See, that right there that's Spider-Man. That's a Spider-Man quote. You're quoting Spider-Man and saying, this, I don't think I need to read the... Look, I get it. To a degree, I get it, right? Because as an actor, that kind of does make sense. You're like, I really want to focus and hone in on what type of performance the director is trying to get out of me when I bring this character to life. So I'm really just going to focus on this script. I'm going to hone in on his direction. I've been playing this character for quite a long time. I got this. I kind of get that. Right? Because that does have some merit. It does have some validity. It does have some actual justification. However, I feel like he could be missing out. He could be missing out, right? He could be missing out on those ideas of what people liked about Sam Wilson, right? Because you got to remember, Marvel's got hundreds, if not thousands of characters in their arsenal. And when they sit there and they try to decide, all right, which one is going to be, the new Captain America, which one's going to be the new leader of the Avengers, which one's going to be the new face of the franchise, which one's going to get a TV show, which one's going to get a movie, which one's going to get tied into the overall story, and which one is just going to be a side piece. When they're sitting there and they're deciding which characters to invest millions of dollars into to bring into a movie, you might be missing out on what made that character work in the comics. Because you got to remember, these characters have to usually be raised to a certain profile of popularity to even be considered for a film adaptation or a television adaptation. Before they even think about bringing this character. They usually check the popularity of the character, and that popularity is usually solely in the comic books, and then it gets maybe adapted to animation. And if that character takes on further in the animation, then yes, it's got a better chance of becoming a movie or a television show. But it usually starts with the popularity in the comics. So if you avoid looking at that, we could also be missing out, because there's traits that might of Sam Wilson that helped raise him to that popularity. And I'm not saying they're the whole reason, but it's the little things, the little details, right? We could be missing out because it's just not taking into consideration in the final performance. So that's one thing, because it feels like we're missing out, he's missing out, and it almost feels like a disservice to those people who invested their time into that character to even bring him up to a level to get adapted, right? Studios, it feels like a disservice to studios, because studios invest millions of dollars into these movies. Get this, outside investors. It's not always the studios self-financing. Sometimes they find them an equities guy, and they're like, hey, do you want to invest in this movie? And you'll see producers stressed out because they always have these investors on their tail asking about the project because they want a return on their investment. Now, it feels like a disservice to those investors, because those investors invest millions of dollars. Now you're taking someone else's money. You're investing millions of dollars into these characters and into these movies. And I'm like, won't a little bit of extra research help? Right? Like, want to be a service to them for giving you millions of dollars to actually read what this character is popular from and what they're popular for, to just help inform. Like, we could be missing out. Like, there's things here that these people felt were worth investing millions of dollars in to bring to screen. It'll help. It can. I think it'll only help, right? Like, it's a disservice to the fans who helped build these characters to this iconic status. I think it's a little bit of a disservice to the investors, both in the studio and out the studio, who poured their money into it. And it's a disservice in the final product. Now, this isn't a full knock on Captain America, because there's a lot of movies that are guilty of this. Like, I don't think there's anything to be gained by not studying the character before you, like, think about it this way. You never, ever hear an actor say, oh, I'm about to play James Bond in a movie, but I've never seen a James Bond movie before. Right? That's like Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson saying, I've never read the comic book of Sam Wilson as Captain America before. You never hear people like it would be unfathomable to think that somebody's about to play James Bond and they've never seen a James Bond movie before. They would never even fix their face to say that, right? Because if they even get a whiff that they're on an interview and they're about to admit it, they're going to go home and watch James Bond that night. All of them. Or at least the ones with Pierce Brosnan. I mean, or Daniel Craig. Like, you're gonna get a sense of what made James Bond work. But you never hear them say anything like that. But it's easier, I think, to be dismissive of comic books from Hollywood than it is for anything else, especially other Hollywood projects. They're just not going to be as dismissive. But it's easier for people in Hollywood to be dismissive of comic books for some reason. Now, again, I'm not saying it as a knock to this movie, because I actually enjoyed Captain America 4. I'm not saying that the comic book actors need to be like scholars, right? Like, they don't have to know these characters like the back of their hands. But, just skim a Wikipedia page or something. Come into a Reddit group. Figure out which stories were like really popular for this character. At least like read a couple pages. Read a couple panels. Read the comic strip from the Daily News. Please. Right? Like, I think it's just going to make things better. Anyway, man. Whew. Whew, he didn't read the dang on comics. He ain't read the comics. I can't believe it. Let me see what you guys are saying about this, because I went off a little bit of a rant. He ain't read the comics. He ain't read the comics. Thank you. I hope the comics add a character based on Anthony Mackie. I mean, this that would be funny, right? Just be like, and we're just not going to look at anything Anthony Mackie related and just do it. At the risk of sounding like an overzealous fanboy, I think it's kind of disrespectful to the audience to not at least skim some of the comics. You know, you never hear anyone from the Lord of the Rings movies say they haven't read, they're going to be in the movie, but they haven't read a little bit of Lord of the Rings. I'm not saying they read everything, right? Like, because those are some serious books, but a lot of them did. A lot of them did read everything. But a lot of them will at least tell you, hey, I read the sections that pertain to my character, right? If you love or hate Rings of Power, you will hear these actors talk about to the books that they've read of Tolkien. Like all of them, at least all the ones I've interviewed, every single one of them has given me that hint that they've been reading the books in addition to their script and their performance to learn what it is that they think audiences might be looking for. Marquisha, research. Yes, research. In 2022 interview, MCU producer Nate Moore said that Marvel doesn't like to even hire Marvel comic fans as MCU writers. The disrespect starts at the top. Nate Moore said it's more of a red flag if you're a comics fan. So I've read this before, and I met Nate Moore, and I got to talk to the dude. He's an interesting man. He's very confident in what he's saying. So I feel like that he's always saying something that is fairly accurate to the perspective from the top. And I think that this all goes back to that committee that they once had helping inform the stories in the MCU and then the disbandment of that committee. Now, you guys might have heard me talk about this committee before. This committee was made up of like Joe Quesada. For those of you who don't know, Joe Quesada is, if you like the Daredevil show, it's because of Joe Quesada's and Frank Miller's take on Daredevil. Now, Joe Quesada, especially with Born Again, probably has the biggest influence. You can see it you can tell from the art style, the way he draws Matt, the way the storytelling that he was on with Daredevil back then is what we're seeing in the Netflix shows and what we'll hopefully see in the Disney Plus show. Joe Quesada was part of this group of consulting creatives that were informing the MCU in its infancy. I think Joss Whedon helped put this group together because Joss Whedon was at time also writing with Marvel Comics. So Joe Quesada, Brian Michael Bendis, I think Jeff Loeb, and a few other comic creators who also had aspirations for crossing over into the film and television side of things. They were consulting with Marvel in the early days. They were informing all of Phase 1, all of Phase 2, all of Phase 3. And not everything worked because Iron Man 2 didn't always work. A lot of things didn't always work, but one of the biggest things was that a lot of it did, and a lot of it helped grow the MCU in its infancy. I think the breaking point was Captain America Civil War. They were already planning Infinity War, Endgame, and Civil War was supposed to help kind of move the characters in the right direction where they needed to be. And the creatives were saying straight up that they didn't think the movie Civil War would work because Marvel didn't have the rights to all of the characters and this is all stuff that's been reported, so take what you want with a grain of salt. But the issue was that they didn't have access to all the characters what made Civil War work in the comics so well. And because the creatives and the executives at Marvel Studios were bumping heads, that creative group was disbanded and they were dismissed from providing further input into the MCU. And since that time, you've seen a shift in how projects are adapted. I think WandaVision was the first loosening of the chain maybe beyond that, because WandaVision was probably kind of somewhat, it was loosely inspired by what Tom King put together in the Vision series, but it was also very original. But you see the difference, and I don't think that left a really good taste. I don't think it left a really good impression with their Marvel executives about how important the actual comic stories are when they're making a movie, when they're making a television show. Because these comic fans could be vocal, we could be obnoxious, we could be loud, we probably said something wrong, and it's like, well, get out, you know. You're no longer invited. You would think Kevin Smith, somebody who's been a comic book creator and a director, would have worked with either Marvel or DC at some point, but they didn't. Joss Whedon was the last. So yeah, they're not allowed in the conversation anymore. And again, I think it just left a bad impression with the studio executives as far as comic creators and their input and how important their stories are. Again, I also feel it's a disservice because, these stories are being raised to the profile they are, literally based off of what comic fans' tastes are, right? Their taste elevated certain stories, Infinity War, Civil War, Spider-Man as a character. Their taste elevated Spider-Man, the event. Like Avengers wasn't even a household name like that, like the X-Men when we got started. Anyway, fans are being, it's a disservice to the fans because they raised the platform of these projects to the point where they're even considered for adaptation, and then it's like, well, we don't need your story, we'll just make something else up. We're talented on our own. I feel it's a disservice. It's a disservice. Now, not to say Civil War didn't turn out to be a fantastic movie, it did, but I'm gonna tell you right now, it is a pale comparison to what the Civil War story was in its original writing. Originally, it was Infinity War level of storytelling, and it got adapted into something that's good, really, really good, but it's not the same scale movie or story at all. Not even close. Let's see. What committee? They disbanded when? They might be a big reason why we've seen it. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I think that there's a big shift now that Marvel is more so into telling original-ish stories and also Frankensteining stories together. I think it contributes to it. Like Wakanda Forever, I thought it was way too many stories compressed into one. It's just way too much for me. And then I felt like it was a disservice because one of the biggest appeals of the animosity between Wakanda and Atlantis with Namor is the center of it all, is the beef between T'Challa and Namor themselves. Shuri is filling the role in that movie, and it's not the same. It's a pale comparison to the history of T'Challa and Namor, in my opinion. They aren't making comic book movies, they're raping IP for money. I mean, yes, and I wouldn't say they're doing it's that egregious, but I think it's just a disservice at the very least. Like, I invested a lot of money into these comic book store based off of the stories, and I feel like they're not given the priority. Again, imagine somebody didn't read Tolkien before making Lord of the Rings. Imagine a James Bond actor going on an interview and fixing his face and saying, I've never seen a James Bond movie, but I think I can do it all just from the script. Fans would be in Reddit posting away until their keyboards were smoking. It would be happening. X, oh my gosh, X, where people feel the most opinionated, it would be number one on trending in a heartbeat. Yeah, it's a disservice at the very least. WandaVision was such an amazing show, but even the Doctor Strange director didn't even watch WandaVision and didn't know he was retreading certain things. They got to work better together. WandaVision was a great show. I dare you to read the Vision comic book that it's based on, because Vision's story there could have benefited from some of the details in the comic. I think it did a good job aesthetically from the looks, but there's certain details about what was happening to Vision from beginning to end to help that could have helped. He had a decent arc in this show, but it only helps. Comic book fans are the core of the fan base, but they don't want to include us in that process. They want our money. Well, the comic book fans alone don't make them profit anymore based off of how much they're spending in budgets. Comic book, like if it was just comic book fans that came out to watch a movie, it was like the Marvel's box office. It was just us, just us was there, just us. Black Widow, just us, only us, right? Eternals box office. You know, they need more, and that's what they're chasing, is finding a way to. They're trying to simplify it. They're like, you know, if I have just a character and the basic idea of the way that he's supposed to be portrayed, then I can do storytelling. I'm a showrunner. I make TV shows. I know what I'm doing. I can just make it my own thing. And sometimes that works. You know, sometimes you end up with like Matt Reeves and what he's doing with Batman and the Penguin, and he's taking his own interpretations of characters. The Penguin in his show is there's comic book roots there. I'm sorry, I almost forgot what I was saying. Like, I never read Batman Year One. Nah, there's a lot of comic book roots there. I take it all back. It's just Marvel right now. I disagree with that. I've interviewed them. I got to speak with them behind the stage. I'm almost 1,000% sure the people who wrote Rings of Power have never seen a book by Tolkien. I think they have. I think that they choose to do a lot more original stuff with it, but I think they've read it. But yeah, Anthony Mackie didn't read the comics. I think it's a disservice for the fans and for all of us. We built these characters up to this iconic status. I feel like that the executives, the actors, everybody should put some respect on that, straight up. Now, the other thing was, this kind of leads into my next topic, which is that Rob Liefeld is leaving Marvel. Now, we talked a bit about this last week, right? With Rob Liefeld talking about how he was not treated nicely at the Captain America premiere, and he felt like, you know, Kevin Feige didn't treat him the greatest. They didn't treat him like Justin Baldoni. They didn't go that far. But he didn't feel like he was given the sense of importance that he felt he deserved. Now this was covered by a few places, but I'm going to show what Deadline reported, because they're probably one of the most reputable sources we have out there. Now, Rob Liefeld is the creator of Deadpool. If I remember correctly, I think the rumor was originally he was creating a design for a character that was supposed to be a new costume for Spider-Man. Spider-Man people kind of rejected it, and then he instead used the design for, to create the character known as Deadpool in the pages of the New Mutants. I want to say it might have been in X-Force, but Deadpool was created by Rob Liefeld and perfected by many other creators who followed him. Now, a lot of people have mixed feelings about Rob Liefeld. He's not always popular for his anatomical depictions of characters in comic book art. He might not always draw feet, but he did create some cool stuff, and he was super popular, and he still is super popular in the world of comic books. Now, he talked about what happened to him as at the July premiere of Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, it was wild because I feel almost really close to this story because I was literally walking down the block and then I was like, oh, snap, there's the premiere of Deadpool and Wolverine. You guys might even see that in some of my out of theater reaction for that movie. So I was walking by to go to my screening for the movie, and the premiere was happening, 3 blocks away. Rob Liefeld apparently was there, not being acknowledged by the folks who were making the movie, including what he said was Kevin Feige not acknowledging him or even shaking his hand. Now, Rob said in this, is quoted as saying, "It was meant to embarrass, diminish, and defeat me." And it's something that he mentioned in his podcast. He recalled being ignored by Marvel Studios boss Kevin Feige on the red carpet before finding out he and his family were not invited to the after party, which was the final straw for Liefeld. Meanwhile, Liefeld posed on the carpet with creatives from the movie, but later learned those photos were deleted as he believes they were only taken to appease him. So he was allowed to take photos with the creatives, maybe the director, maybe the actors. But when he went to Disney's photographers to get a copy of the photos, he was told they were deleted. At some point you go, I've received the message, and the message is loud and clear. Now, previously, Liefeld sent an email to Marvel after they granted Wolverine co-creator Roy Thomas a special spot in the film's credits, which upset co-creator Len Wein's widow, also a friend of Liefeld. He inquired about a special mention for himself in the credits, noting that he did not ask for money. So what he's saying is, like, at the beginning of the Superman movies, it'll say, special thanks to like Joe Siegel and something Schuster, right? Schuster and Siegel. He's like, yo, can you put something like that at the beginning of the movie? Like for me, Fabian Nicienza, can you put Rob the special thanks at the beginning of the movie? I thought it would be really cool. And we all know, and he even comments that Marvel's treatment of creators has never been their strength. And he touches on what I've just been mentioning. Without the worlds, the characters, and the concepts that we create, and in this case, the world of Deadpool, there are no films to shoot, no blockbusters to distribute. I am not the easy button at Staples. I am the human imagination behind it all. Which is wild to me, which is really, really wild to me, because when you really think about it, right? Marvel doesn't really... You guys didn't even know about the Comics Committee, right? You guys didn't know. Joe Quesada, Brian Michael Bendis. Do you even know these names? Brian Michael Bendis is the creator of Miles Morales. Do you know this name? You would think you would. This is him. This is the creator of Miles Morales, Brian Michael Bendis. He claims that Hollywood undervalues comic creators, which I've been arguing they do. He felt pushed aside at the Deadpool and Wolverine event. That's kind of messed up. If you're the creator, you take a pose, you pose for pictures with the other film creatives, and you can't get a copy of the photo. It's digital. It was deleted. Imagine, like, you. Here's my thing. And it feels like it's an issue with comic books specifically. You never see creatives from other mediums treated like this on a big scale as Marvel films. It just does not happen. I watched that, you watch Apple TV shows, and whoever is the creator, they're getting acknowledgement right in the opening. It's there. You watch just all right, how about this? Think about this. Imagine it's, I don't know, the premiere of Harry Potter 4. Harry Potter 4, right? Coming out. It's a big movie. Everybody's hyped. This world is going crazy. It's the 4th time we've seen these characters. This is going to be awesome. Oh, snap. There's J.K. Rowling. Imagine J.K. Rowling walking the red carpet for the premiere of Harry Potter 4, and then, I don't know, the CEO of Warner Brothers doesn't know who she is. Like, just walks on by, doesn't really acknowledge her. Just, I never, who's that? The Help? I have no idea who is making me $1 billion at a movie. I have no idea who made these worlds. I don't know. Just gonna ignore her and act like I don't see anything. Mm-mm. Oh, how about this? It's season 4 of Game of Thrones, and George R. Martin is walking down, and he's like, "Yo, I want a picture with the cast. I want a picture with the cast, with the creator." Imagine that not being plastered everywhere. I think enough of you here know what George R. R. Martin looks like. You know what he at least looks like, right? The guy, he's got that cap. He's always got that like newsboy cap, big old Santa beard. We all know what George R. R. Martin looks like. Don't know who Brian Michael Bendis, Joe Quesada. We don't know who these comic book creators are. I feel like it's specific to comic book creators, and it feels like a huge disservice because, and a little, I feel like they deserve more respect considering these are the people who created the worlds. If George R. R. Martin didn't sit down and put, keyboard to paper and start talking about the Winds of Winter, HBO wouldn't have had their crown jewel TV show that it's still probably their most watched show ever, right? If it wasn't for the Rob Liefelds and the Jim Lees and the Todd McFarlanes or the Stan Lees, the Steve Dickos, the John Romitas, the Sal Buscema, if you don't have these people in the background, Ron Friends, doing their work to help elevate the character, build these worlds. Oh, you want to go and give Spider-Man a black suit? I'm going to draw him a black suit. Oh, it's not going to look nothing like the old suit? I like this. Oh, we're going to make Venom? Eric Larson's like, oh, Venom is cool, but I'm going to give Venom a long tongue. If these guys didn't add these little details to make these characters transcend in popularity, because Venom was popular, but Eric Larson made him a little bit more popular with the drool and the tongue. If they didn't do that, then the movie wouldn't be happening, right? Spider-Man and Venom never met in the films. Venom don't even have the spider symbol on his chest, but he got the long tongue, right? He's still got that characteristic that the comic creators introduced that is helping transcend the character to film status. I feel like these creators deserve it. Matter of fact, let me make sure y'all know what Eric Larson looked like too. Right? Let me make sure you know what my man Eric Larson looks like. He is him. This is Eric Larson. You might see him at comic book conventions. He's out here. He's still out here. Creator of Savage Dragon. Show you guys what Todd McFarlane looks like. I know a lot of you probably have a better idea of what Todd looks like. You know some of his art. You know the way he drew the character. He created Spawn. Know what Todd is out here working with. These creatives made the characters that are making these executives and these investors a lot of money. It's weird to me that Marvel puts into their contracts that I want. Now this might not be true, but I've heard, and it was reported to before, that Marvel puts in their comic book creators contracts that any character that they make under the House of Marvel, they don't own. They don't own. Not even a little bit. They don't get any payout. They don't get nothing. Nothing is promised. Now, if a comic book company decides to say, oh, Todd McFarlane, you created Venom, I'm going to give you a little bit of kickback because the movie's making, I don't know, 800 million in theaters. Here's, your cut. Thank you for creating him. It's not promised. It's not promised. It's not promised. That's why Todd pushes Spawn so hard. He's like, I own this. I own this character. Whatever Spawn does, I'm getting something for my creative input, for my creation. Whenever he works with Marvel or DC, he don't own that. He don't own none of that. Jim Lee doesn't own none of that. Even at DC, he don't own the characters that he creates. He doesn't have any legal rights to them. Marvel keeps them. DC keeps them wholly. What are we saying out here? Damn, the Rob Liefeld situation is sad. It is. Terrible. They definitely deserve more respect and recognition. Again, imagine J.K. Rowling or George R.R. Martin walking a red carpet and people are like, can you just hurry along? It wouldn't happen. It just doesn't happen, right? I think these creators deserve more. You don't see Blake Crouch treated like that at Apple for dark matter. It don't happen. Anyway, but yeah, Rob Liefeld, he's sick of it. He's done with it. He's leaving Marvel. He's not writing anything else. He's not doing any more Deadpool stories. He's not doing nothing else. And he dropped some recent comics that have been doing really well for Marvel. So that's it's not like it's gonna be the end of Marvel, but that is definitely a loss for fans, right? That the creator is now separating himself from the character and he's distancing himself from Marvel altogether. So really sad to hear that. I think it's going to be a punch in the guts for fans, and we're just gonna hope Marvel does better. I don't know. This is getting wild. But what do you guys think? It's all part of how Hollywood has been shifting. The studios don't care so much about the creatives and creativity; they just care about the dollars. Yes, they do. But I mean, yeah, I got nothing. It's just sad. Now, see what you're saying, Dragonette? Maybe you wouldn't recognize J.K. Rowling, but I promise you, them kids that read that book, they know what she looked like. Mm-hmm. And if she got in the elevator with them, that elevator's getting stuck. They're gonna break that joint on purpose. They're gonna find ways to find time with her. Now she's say what you want about her for her views, but she's usually identifiable to the fans. I'm sorry, y'all. Now, my next topic, I think this is my last topic I had. Captain America 4. Now, for those of you who saw my out of theater reaction, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie. I even encourage those of you who had the opportunity, who were on the fence and needed something to do Valentine's Day weekend, check it out. Go see it. I saw a lot